fresh copy of our beverages database with a couple of enhancements. Some more records have been entered, so we can actually navigate through records when we see these forms. And let's now look at some different ways we can create forms. Now, what I'm really going to focus on here is creating forms via the customers table. We'll use this as our central point for now for deciding which forms we're going to keep and which forms we won't. Now, anytime you want to create a form, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the table you want to use is selected. Here, the customers table is already selected. So on the ribbon, we'll click the Create tab. Now, in the Forms group, you'll notice there's quite a few different ways to create forms. In fact, I mentioned that you could create a form with one click of a button. Let's see what happens when we click Form. That was fast. Take a look. You have a customer's form. There's even a label at the top. You have all of the customer's fields. And, for good measure, you also have the order information for the customers. When you use a one-click approach to creating a form, not only do you get the table that you chose, in this case the customer's table, you also get the related table, in this case orders. You remember those relationships we established between customers and orders? They're in play now in creating forms. Had we not done the relationship, we would not see the orders here. Now on that note, you may or may not always want to have the related table within the same form. But if you do the one-click method, that's what you'll get. Now, that doesn't mean we need to delete this form. We just want to go through and see how we can create this customer's form some different ways, then we'll decide what to keep. So, I'll scroll back up to the top of this, and we'll click the Create tab. And another method we can use to create a form is a form wizard. Let's see what this brings us. Here, we can choose which table we want. So using the wizard, you don't necessarily have to have the correct table selected on the left. Rather, you can click the drop-down arrow and choose whatever table you want. Now, it just so happens that the customer's table was selected, so we will use it. Now, while we're here, we can determine which fields we want to use and which fields we don't want to use in the form. In looking up and down these fields, I'd say we should use all of the fields. Now, if you're just going to move fields over one at a time, you'll use a single arrow button to move fields over. But if you're deciding you want to use all of the fields, use the double arrow button. And all of these will move over to the right into the selected fields area. Now, because this is a wizard, we will have a few decisions to make. Let's see what happens when we click Next. This is asking us what kind of layout we want for our form. Now, we have 4 layouts, but we basically have 2 categories. We have columnar, and believe it or not, the columnar layout is pretty similar to the first form we created, because we have a column of information. Or we can use justified. This is going to give you a little bit more of a left to right look for your form. Now, here's an important point. The columnar and the justified layouts will show one record at a time. If for any reason you need to show more than one record at a time, you would want to go with either the tabular layout or the datasheet layout. Notice that you have kind of an Excel look and feel to these 2 layouts. Now, if you're trying to make a lot of edits at once, say you're trying to update inventory on products or things like that, these forms might make sense. But right now, we just want to edit one customer at a time. So I'm actually going to go with the columnar look, and we'll click Next. It says, what title do you want for your form? Well, this TBL Customers 1 is not exactly a very good title. So I'll just replace this with Customers. And then from here, we have a choice. Do we want to open the form or see its design? I say let's just open the form. We'll click Finish. Now, this is pretty similar looking to the first form we created, but a couple of differences we see are as follows. First, the label looks better at the top. Second, we don't see the orders table here. Now, eventually we'll figure out if we want to keep this form and make some edits. But right now, let's continue the tour of creating forms.